rAVe Radio. With rants and raves, you'll be okay. And today is your lucky day. It is rants and raves with Gary K.
Hey everyone, this is Gary K, and we are post InfoComm 2021, a show that none of us thought would happen 100%, but we all felt confident that some type of show would happen. And I actually had a chance to meet with Andrew Starks, the Director of Product Management at Macnica America. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks for joining me here on the week after InfoComm. And
Right.
First off, I want to know how the show was for you, because you're kind of there in a very interesting capacity because you serve two roles. You have your role with Macnica, which we'll talk about in just a second, but you also are significant in the role that you're playing in trying to get an AVoverIP standard adopted. So you kind of wore two hats while on the show floor, didn't you?
Right. Well, yeah, generally, I believe I have like at least two jobs, working with AIMS and then all the other people that do the technical side of IPMX. But yeah, at the show, it was interesting for us. It was the bar for attending was probably a tiny bit lower because we were depending on other manufacturers being there. So if the show floor was completely barren of actual, customers, we were okay because we had the vendors to talk to. But I think on all fronts, there was good attendance, and I was actually, quite honestly surprised because we probably had about the average amount of dead time, but it wasn't very much. And we had longer conversations, and the people that were there were pretty committed. So it was a huge success. From both
I would agree with
perspectives.
that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think it's pleasantly surprised is the term I keep hearing from everyone. I'm curious as to, what were people's what's the traction and interest in the IPMX standard, proposed standard, which is based on SMPTE 2110. By the way, if you're interested, Google SMPTE 2110, then IPMX, you'll find it, or go to aimsalliance.org. But what was sort of the sentiment? Was there enough people that knew about it? I mean, we've been helping at rAVe spread the word. What was it like? We
had, I would say, like 5% like outright skeptics, and then we had maybe 30% that were, just kind of ignorant of it. And then the rest already knew about it and were looking for more info, or, there was a mix of reactions. That's a different shift. Most people knew of what we were doing, not so much from IPMX, but from SMPTE 2110. And then we introduced the brand at ISC, and then that thing, I don't know if you remember it, but COVID happened. and then
I recall.
And then every interaction we've had since then has really been through webinars and online, presence. So it's been building. I would say there's been a remarkable shift in awareness, really.
And do you get a lot of challenges with regard to, how are you going to do a standard without having someone like Crestron and Extron adopt it? Or do people are like, thank goodness that somebody's come up with a standard. How do we help you, make sure that these companies adopt it?
So there's two groups. So the first group that you mentioned, they aren't so much concerned about a particular manufacturer's. I would say it's more like, what I hear all the time from customers is that they're waiting, so like the demand for AVoverIP, I think, is quite depressed. There's a lot more people that want to go IP than what are actually doing it, because they do not want a proprietary ecosystem that's all lock-in, because they know they're never going to get a monitor with that port on it. They're never going to get, anywhere beyond the gateway stage, right? And then they're looking at the pseudo standards, and there's quite a few people that don't really think about the difference between something owned by one company and one that's truly an open standard. And so those people, they want to know which one will win, and they're a little angry that there's yet another one. And then when you talk to them a little bit more about the fact that like Macnica doesn't own this, like you can go out and get the documents and make whatever you want with it. And that isn't true of the other options out there. Once they understand that difference, then they start to head nod and all that. And then the other thing that really kind of captures the conversation, I would say, is when you look at some of the decisions made. So with IPMX, it is very much integrated with live production workflows. So your presentation workflows and your digital science workflows and your live production workflows are all first-class citizens in the IPMX standard. And the second thing that people really latch onto is the multi-gigabit support. So, you've got universities are a great example. They've got a ton of 1 gig use, but then they've got art situations where no matter what you tell them, they don't want anything that's compressed. And the same is true for medical. So they like the idea of being able to kind of pick, but having the same control plane and really thought through kind of infrastructure interoperability, even though, you have some devices that might be one profile or another, they want all of that under the same kind of umbrella.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that the typical application for university is 10 gig inside the room, 1 gig outside the room. So if we're keeping whatever's being switched and distributed inside the room, 10 gig it, but when you go outside the room, go 1 gig, and that way we can send it wherever we want a gig, and then we can go H.26465 outside of the campus. I think that's going to be and they want it all to work together. So in other words, they want to use the same decoding device, whether it be soft or hard, a piece of hardware. They want that same device to be able to decode any of those three at any moment in time and get whatever bandwidth they want. And that's the uniqueness of going with a standard that we don't have right now in the ecosystems, because even the ecosystems that do 1 gig and 10 gig, they don't work flawlessly together. Like that you're either 1 gig or 10 gig, that you can't pick and choose very easily. You got to kind of decide between it, and there's not interoperability.
The switching between the two, the 10 and the 1 tends to have a lot more latency, a lot more translation stuff. And then the other thing too, that I think, universities, especially, but integrators really are opening up to. It's a longer conversation, especially if you're depending on who you're talking to within the integrators. But when you kind of point out that the API for IPMX is all like a higher level REST API versus the API that's typically with these AVoverIP standards or C++ low level APIs that are really designed to be implemented on a box, and then the manufacturer's unique control layer kind of goes on top of that. With IPMX, there's plenty of creativity for control manufacturers and control developers to make, really robust ecosystems, but the basic element of discovery, connections, and just, like property discovery, all of that is opened up at a real high level. So now universities, especially, but also integrators, when they want to do weird, funky things internally, they have access to do that, and it's a lot more straightforward.
Well, talk about, that's great. What you just said is exactly correct. Talk about the Macnica option, because you're providing sort of a design standard option, which is universally compatible with all the different ways that you could build with IPMX.
Right. Well, so in my conversations, it always starts with the open standard, is that part of your strategy? And we talk about that for a while. And there are quite a few manufacturers, I said the majority of manufacturers, that are either resigned to it or it's like center in their strategy to get to an open standard. For a lot of them, they're not innovating on the plumbing, they're innovating on the higher layers, and they want more of an ecosystem there. And so once we get to that point and start talking about that, then it's really, how are you going to be ready on the day the standard is out? And and that is our mission. We want to make sure that as early as possible, that people can make IPMX products out there. And I'm going to break something on Gary K's, cast here. Actually, I won't break it. I'll make a strong prediction that I encourage you to go kind of dig more on. I think that InfoComm next year in June is really going to be where we start to see real world interoperability, and that's where the rubber meets the road. Because I think this year is still a bit of tire kicking, and what we heard a lot from many manufacturers is, as soon as our customers start asking for it, then we'll start sort of thinking about it. So we took that to heart, and we are making that our mission, and also to the not just AIMS, but also the other organizations that actually do the work with IPMX. We've really kind of made it clear to them that between here and InfoComm next year, we need to show multi-manufacturer interoperability. We need to show products that are on the street right now.
What I'm hearing you say, I'm gonna decode what you're saying. What I'm hearing you saying is that by next year's InfoComm, we could see IPMX also work with NVX, also work with Extron.
No. What
are you saying?
I'm saying that there should be not just Macnica's dev kit, but there should be other manufacturers that are showing IPMX products that can, our dev kit can stream to them. And they can stream between each other.
So
and
create an ecosystem of companies that are building on the same platform of compatibility, interoperability, and standard that is. So when do you think, like, it's really not, the standard IPMX is really not written in a format that can be passed yet, right? I mean, it's still being developed, right? It's not,
there
it's
are
a
edges,
proposed standard, but it's not like there's a committee that's going to say, yep, this is the standard.
Well, that is something that, I mean, Ames really is the one that has, branded it and really set what the core requirements to be IPMX are. Some of those, like how you get certified and how that works and when you can use the logo, all that is still in process. Okay. The technology side, we actually have customers today that are selling product right now that are based on the IPMX core. What's missing though is the things that you need for like the wider variety of ProAV options. So like the key critical parts are, a good EDID API and also HDCP. So those are the things that I think once we have HDCP interoperability, once we have good EDID support, everything else that we already have that's supporting like more of your live production workflows, that all comes together to a point where there's still more to do and still more we'd like, but now a manufacturer can credibly make a solution where a customer can do 99% of what they do and it's interoperable.
And timeline, I mean, when do you think?
Well, I'm saying, Gary, that I think that really for us, we need to have that settled and true and legitimate at InfoComm next year. Okay. That might be just more of my opinion now, and I think we might have more to say about that as we kind of move forward a bit. But that was our real takeaway, and we're kind of in a position for that now. We're really we have everything's in flight that's required really, and most of it is we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's really. So standards kind of they move at the pace they do. You've got to get engineers all across the world to be able to read a document where they can make a complex product that works with other complex products. So it takes a long time to get it to that level of quality. But we've obviously, COVID's actually been a blessing in that way. We've been able to spend, a ton of time on that and we made huge progress. So we think that we can hit our targets.
Well, you can learn more at the Macnica site at macnica.com, and you can go to Americas for where Andrew hangs out, or you can go to the Ames Alliance.
I forgot to answer your question though, right? So what we are doing is at Macnica is, we want to make sure people are ready on the day of the standard. And to that effect, we have a dev kit that we have been showing and promoting and enhancing. And we even have reference designs for gateways and things like that. So people can today, right now, get our dev kit. It's only $19.50 for the encoder decoder. It's got a switch. We really go to great lengths to make sure that it's got everything you need for an IPMX environment. And we have a lot of people that just buy it just to tire kick, just to play with the standard, just to learn about it. And then the other group of people that we have buy it, they're actually building products with it. So I really encourage people to get a hold of us and check it out. It's a great way to learn a lot about the standard in a real hands-on way.
And we'll put a link into that so you can learn all about the dev kit in the description of this podcast below. Andrew, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget about the AIM Alliance website as well. Ames Alliance, AIMS alliance.org. Andrew, thank you very much for the update.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Gary. It's great talking to you.
You too. Take care.
rAVe Radio with Rants and Raves.